3 ringleaders of anti-ICE mob who stormed a church, including school board member arrested, AG Pam Bondi announces. A BLM leader who served on a school board, a woke TikToker, and a third alleged ringleader of an anti-ICE mob who stormed a Minnesota church on Sunday service has been arrested, Attorney General Pam Bondi announced Thursday. We have arrested Nakima Levy-Armstrong, who allegedly played a key role in organizing the coordinated attack on City's Church in St. Paul, Minnesota, AG Bondi said. Listen loud and clear. We do not tolerate attacks on places of worship. Armstrong allegedly led the raucous group, including Don Lemon, from the Radical Justice Network to storm the church and call out resident pastor David Eastwood, accusing him of moonlighting as the acting field office director for ICE in Minnesota. A picture of Armstrong being led away in handcuffs was shared by the Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem on X Thursday morning. I think that this is evidence that there is actual things happening at the DOJ. People love to say nothing ever happens. They're not doing this. And I understand the impulse because people wanted to see like Trump come in and just start swinging the hammer and start arresting everybody that they didn't like. That was never realistic in my opinion. The DOJ actually has to build cases. People would love to point at January 6th and say, well, January 6th, they had arrests 2 days later. They had arrests 3 days later, et cetera, et cetera. Well, this happened over the weekend. Monday was a holiday. Today's Thursday. They've got arrests. What do you guys think about that?
It does prove that they can arrest people, which is nice. Because for a while there, I kind of thought that they kind of couldn't. But I do wish that there was arrests of people that were more significant to the greater scheme of things, like as we would coin the deep state arrest. I think those would be a little bit more impactful. But I'm certainly glad to see that they can arrest people. That is a good thing.
I was happy to see that. Happy. I mean, I just think justice was served in that they targeted the person that was funding and organizing it. And we're out to see if they're going to keep arresting every person that was there and if they're going to, how harsh it's going to be. But the organizer, I think you actually have this girl pulled up. We'll talk about her.
So the reason I bring this up is because Nakima Levy-Armstrong, she is an activist, right? She has been around the BLM, the left. She's a lawyer. She's been involved in this kind of basically propaganda for, at least since 2015. She was in Ferguson. And now at this point, she's made a career of it. She's began as an associate law professor at the University of St. Thomas. She attained tenure at a university, was granted a full professorship. Excuse me. She's worked for the NAACP for law students' interest in working with underserved communities. So she's steeped in this. She's the one that organized this. And I think that it's more important, and there's people that are going to be upset about this, it's more important that they arrested her than Don Lemon. Now, before you start throwing eggs, Don Lemon is a personality that people see on the news. They hear him all the time. They don't like the things they say, so they've got this emotional reaction to Don Lemon. This person is actually an organizer. She does the work, as they would say. She's out there consistently trying to not just raise funds and stuff, but she's organizing these protests, which in my opinion, they're not legal protests at all, right? Going into a church is clearly illegal. Obviously, she's arrested for it. Getting Don Lemon would have been satisfying emotionally, but this is something that will actually affect the network on the ground.
They're also framing it as a riot. Like, they might think they were protesting, but I guess because of the unruly nature of the experience, the DOJ, or at least Harmeet Dillon, I think, was referring to it as a riot. Sorry, Tate, you were about to...
No, yeah, I mean... I agree. This is the first person you obviously want to bring in front of a judge, again, to Phil's point, because she has experience organizing. She has experience in these activist networks. It's a safe bet that a lot of these Minneapolis area activist networks probably depend on her experience, her leadership, these sorts of things. But I mean, to a lot of people in the audience point, like we want to see a full-blown crackdown from the DOJ. I can be a little patient, to make sure they get these cases down right, to make sure they have this all buttoned up when they do, again, start prosecuting. But I do think Don Lemon needs to be held accountable here. I think, again, to Bobby's point, the lack of high-profile arrests is a little frustrating to people because we did see under the Biden administration that, again, the DOJ is capable of going after the top dogs when they want to. I have a lot of grace for the Trump administration, the DOJ, because, again, it's hard to root out all of these deep state apparatchiks that are that make up the DOJ. But at a certain point, I think Don Lemon really would send a massive message to the left, and that should be. I know it probably is a big focus for the DOJ, but they really need to get that across the finish line.
Today I was thinking about it, and like maybe that it would be a bad message to send. It would send a message if you arrested Don Lemon, but like if you really want to screw it in, you go after the little guy that can't defend themselves. I know it's a horrible thing to say because that's what they did with January 6th. The people that don't have the money to afford the defense funds, the people that were there kind of like just came along for the ride, you crush them. And that's not necessarily the ethical thing to do, but that's if you really want to, because they're nobodies. The news won't make a big deal out of John Doe number 7, but Don Lemon is going to get constant headlines as long as he's in jail every day. It'll be about Don Lemon, be the pariah, So
to that point, if they broke the law, I think they should arrest them. It doesn't matter whether they're the big guy or the little guy. To the point of Don Lemon, right, from the Post-Millennial. The DOJ attempts to charge Don Lemon over storming St. Paul Church with an anti-IS group. The magistrate declines to sign the complaint. So the DOJ actually put the effort in to get Don Lemon, but it seems that the magistrate wouldn't sign the paperwork. Now, I've heard conflicting reports that this particular magistrate was a guy that had signed a bunch of the January 6th stuff. But because there's conflicting reports, I don't want to talk about the guy's name and stuff. But from the Post-Millennial, they say, a federal magistrate judge in Minnesota has reportedly refused to sign a complaint from the Department of Justice charging former CNN host Don Lemon in connection with the storming of a St. Paul church. Lemon was seen embedded with the anti-IS agitators, kissing one of the organizers on the cheek and handing out coffee. A source familiar with the matter told CBS News that the Attorney General is enraged at the magistrate's decision. This comes after 2 women, organizer Nikema Levy Armstrong and St. Paul School Board member Chantilly Louise Allen, have been charged with violations of the FACE Act for their roles in the incident. A separate source told the outlet that the Department of Justice could still find other avenues through which to charge Don Lemon. Now, I do think that they're going to end up charging him. I think that they're going to, because I think that they want that scalp. I think that they really do want to have that high profile person, but I also think that they have to get it past judges, and there are so many activist judges that are all across the United States.
It makes me wonder, on January 6th, I remember there was a lot of people that got arrested that were doing journalism in the Capitol. But I remember there was this one clip where it showed this angle that was kind of behind the guards of the guys coming up the stairs. And I don't think that guy was ever charged for anything, and he was inside the Capitol. So I would wonder if this is a similar type of thing where they're kind of protecting their own. But if the same exact thing happened on the right, which I think you guys were talking about yesterday, would they just come after them? And if that is the case, then you have to go after Don Lemon.
Yeah, the nice thing is the DOJ will still have options here. The federal magistrate not signing off doesn't eliminate. They can still bring this before. They could assemble a grand jury to seek a charge. So it's not the end of the world, but I think it's in this Post-Millennial article, you might have read it already, is that the AG was furious with the federal magistrate, as she should be, because again, the fact that they can pop all these other people on FACE Act charges, but they can't get Don Lemon, just tells you that probably there is some sway over this magistrate. The problem with the grand jury is it's going to be assembled in Minnesota.
Yeah.
So it would be a little tricky, but the DOJ, again, I'm not necessarily a panic in here, but the Biden administration did figure this out quite often. So,
but I think part of the reason why the Biden administration figured it out is because they already had judges in place that would do this. The Trump administration has not been able to really fill out, the judiciary the way that the Obama administration and the Biden administration did.
Judges are getting hung up all the time, and it's because Republicans are weak and they are still sticking with this antiquated blue slips system, which is just hamstring us. And it's a completely optional system. It's not a law anywhere. We just voluntarily allow Democrat senators to block our judge appointments. But to my point, with the DOJ, again, they have other options. So this isn't necessarily saying well, the Biden administration did it, so you should do the exact same thing. It's just to say don't give up, don't blackpill, get creative if you're in the DOJ. And again, I'm preaching to the choir if anybody's watching that's within the DOJ. But you can't let this Don Lemon thing go. I really think it's going to be red meat for the base. And right now, it does seem like morale. This year we've started off hot, but before that we needed some victories, and I think this is a victory you could add to the pile in 2026. We've seen a few already. So it just has to happen.
So Harmy Dillon was tweeting about this. But the post-millennial went on. Civil Rights Division Assistant Attorney General Harmy Dillon wrote in a response to Lemon claiming he was at the church in a journalistic capacity. She says, "No one has the right to protest by trespassing into a private house, especially a house of God Almighty. Freedom of the press does not protect journalists nor anyone else when they are actively committing crimes." And that's something that's worth noting. The idea that Don Lemon wants you to internalize and wants you to really believe is that he was just there covering. But like they said earlier in the post-millennial piece, he walked up to Nekima and gave her a kiss on the cheek. He was handing out coffee to the people that were there. That goes beyond just being a journalist. I mean, if you're in a combat zone and you're wearing a press badge, but you're handing out magazines full of ammunition to the guys, or you're walking around with the group that's going to attack someone and you're handing out food or coffee, there's going to be a whole lot of questions about, are you really a journalist? And I think that that's the same kind of situation here. Don Lemon could have gone there and actually acted like a journalist, but you could listen to the questions that he was asking the pastor there, or the preacher there, and he's obviously politically aligned with the protesters. He went there with them. He knew about the situation beforehand. They informed him. They wanted him to cover it because he's aligned with them politically. Again, he was handing out coffee, helping to organize this, or at least making them more comfortable. So I don't think that you can actually, realistically or convincingly make the argument that he wasn't involved. You can say he wasn't one of the organizers, but he was definitely one of the protesters, particularly when he was there asking questions that were, looking to make people uncomfortable, which he said in a follow-up interview after the show.
It seemed like the foreknowledge was kind of part of the problem. Mm-hmm. The sad part about all of this is that even if they do arrest Don Lemon, this activist woman, I think, kind of got exactly what she wanted. I don't think that these people are going to go to prison for multiple years. I would bet if they even do get prosecuted, they serve little to no time at all or get a slap on the wrist. And now every person that never knew who that activist girl was now knows who she is. And she's going to use this as a badge of honor going forward. I watched the, like the perp walk type photos on New York Post, and this is the most press these people have ever got. And Don Lemon, for lack of a better word, he's going to get a ton of press from this as well. And I think that in the end, they're not going to serve something proportionate enough to how much this is going to galvanize their position in their whole group of agitators. Now, does that mean that you don't prosecute them? No, but I think it's going to end up helping them in the end, and they're not going to really serve that much. I bet none of them serve time at all.
So I'm not sure what kind of time they're facing with the charges. I'm not even sure what they're being charged with. But the idea that, and I know that you said, we should prosecute him, and I agree. I don't think that we should be looking for reasons to be negative about it, just because this is actually the first kind of victory that the DOJ is kind of giving to us. And again, I don't know what the charges are going to be, and I don't know how long the maximum sentence is, but it's my opinion that they should be you should throw the book at them, right? Like whatever the maximum is, that's what they should get. And I don't see a whole lot of, I don't find the arguments against that convincing. And what you're alluding to is something that we hear fairly frequently when people say, well, you don't want to, and not that you're saying this, because this is a bit of a different argument, but it rings similar to the argument, well, you don't want to do the things that the Democrats would do, or you don't want to do this because you'll anger the left, or you'll embolden them, or you'll upset them. And that is just, to me, that's not convincing. You have to exercise power when you have it. And you have to do everything you can to make sure the charges stick and make sure that they go to jail for as long as possible. And the reason is they're going to do that to conservatives when they get into power again. The days of polite politics, they're long gone. Those days are over.
But I don't even think that's necessarily the reason that you would issue the DOJ to go after him. It's just you got.
The reason is they broke the law.
Yeah, you do the right thing. You uphold the law. And if they were trespassing, I still really haven't watched the video. There was a video of multiple videos of legitimate riots inside of a church. And
to Bobby's point, I mean, like what the FACE Act is, it would be like 2 to 3 year sentences. That's like the criminal level, depending on like if you have any priors or that sort of thing. But it's not going to be like this just insane locking them up for 10, 20 years like people want to see. And that's the thing that is kind of unfortunate. Is, I mean, the FACE Act is great. It's going to make it easy to charge these people. But, like, I mean, 2 to 3 years seems fine to me. I don't even think it's going to be that long.
I hope that happens.
Yeah. I mean, with Don Lemon, same thing.
They go to jail for 3 years and they're out just in time for the Democrats to win again.
Yeah, literally. Yeah. So, I mean, that is a good point, though. I mean, they could be seeking, like, press through martyrship. It's just they're making the calculation that they're not going to get 2 to 3 years because that would be very debilitating for their.
That's what I mean. If it was like 3 months and it blew them up, it's like maybe they baked that into the cake where they're like, this is gonna make us look like a freedom fighter. And what they did was completely purposeless. I remember during the George Floyd time of year in Florida, I saw these people yelling at people that were just sitting at a restaurant. They're like, "You're white and you're gonna sit here while George Floyd." They're like, "What are you even talking about?" So it was a completely purposeless protest. It achieved literally nothing.
I disagree with that. I think that the point of that is to intimidate people on the right. I really do think that it was about intimidating not just the people that were at that church, but other people that are basically on the right, other people that go to church, basically saying, look, you're not safe. Right? They're saying you're not safe in your house of worship. You're not safe walking around the street. And this is something that politicians have said. Maxine Waters said it herself. Get in their face and make sure that they know that they're not welcome. The Democrats really do want to intimidate people out of their political opinions. Now, I know that doesn't work. Right, you confront people and you push them, and people tend to double down on what they already believe. But the impulse from the Democrats, I really do think, is about intimidation. They want to scare people. They want to make people feel like they shouldn't. They're wrong for having these opinions. So at the very least, they'll keep their heads down. Mm-hmm. So that way, the Democrats can go and do, or the activists, the left can basically do what they want to do unimpeded.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. But what I'm saying is that there could have been a lot of people that were at that church service that agreed that ICE is bad. Just because they're at church doesn't mean that they disagree, that they think, Renee Good should have been hurt by that. So I'm just saying there was no specific stance that they were taking just by the act of being in that church at that time. They could have been leftists in there that just happened to be at church, and these people march in and they're yelling at them. If it was some type of right-wing organization or a specific thing where it's like these people have all declared that they believe this thing, then that would make more sense. Not that I'm saying that they don't want to do what you're saying.
I think that's why they targeted like the Southern Baptist Church specifically, because like the SBC, the Southern Baptist Convention, it's an overwhelmingly conservative denomination. It's like 80% Republican, I'm pretty sure. And I think that's actually why it matters, the specific church that they went after. Because again, like to your point, if it was like a Methodist church or Episcopalian, like probably the majority of congregants would be agreeing with their protests. But the fact that they've specifically gone after evangelicals is a very strategically smart play if you're like a leftist trying to intimidate. Because again, like evangelicals are the largest religious group in the United States. They're overwhelmingly conservative. They have a very conservative temperament to begin with. And then you have people like Jennifer, I think it was Jennifer Welch, came out after when she was interviewing Don Lemon, and she was like, yeah, the church was filled with white supremacists, because she's saying, again, like from her perspective, that is how they view evangelicals. They view evangelicals as a stand-in for middle Americans. They view evangelicals as these kitschy conservatives that just aren't up with the times, these sorts of things. And so I think that's specifically why they went after that church. I mean, I know they were alleging that the pastor was like some like moonlighting as a ICE field agent officer, whatever you want to call it. But I think it was like a very strategic decision they made to go after a Southern Baptist church.
Thanks for checking out this clip from Timcast IRL. Make sure to watch the show live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. Subscribe to this channel, and we will see you all there.